Yep.
Hello, everyone. So, I wanted to go live today just to talk a little bit more about what's going on with the market. I've been seeing comments here and there about people asking what exactly is happening with the Trump administration and then how any of these regulations or rules or changes is going to impact housing prices. And over the last couple of days, I've been releasing a couple of episodes that talk about possible changes that can come with the tariffs, how can that impact housing prices, along with changes in immigration. And so that's Nova Rice co-founder right there. So he's going to step by. He was helping me set this up for now. But I wanted to take this moment to go more in depth about those changes. I know a lot of people have been in the lookout, wondering what's happening. Is this the right time to buy? Is this the right time to sell? So what is the administration really doing to help housing affordability? So I wanted to take a moment and jump straight into this article right here that I came across the other day, and I was very surprised to see how no one has brought this up. Even I didn't know about this. I know he signed an executive order, but I didn't know like the details of it until now. So this is an article courtesy of Navigate. And in essence, it talks about the executive order and it shares what are some of the reforms, initiatives that are going to be implemented and making this happen, right? So the first one, it's reducing regulatory burdens. And so when I read this first point, I was just like, okay, what does it mean? Like, it's just too vague, right? The memorandum directs federal agencies to identify and eliminate regulations that unnecessarily increase the cost of housing construction, and the administration aims actually to lower construction costs by streamlining these regulations, making homes more affordable. Okay, so like, more affordable in what sense, right? So like, it wasn't really telling me the story that I needed to hear, or at least it wasn't providing me the information that I needed to see. So I started diving. I did a little bit of a dive in here, and I was able to find this article from the National Association of Home Builders. I'm not going to go in details about what it says, but this was really interesting, the stats that they were sharing. So the regulatory cost adds a whopping $93,870 to new home prices. And this article was actually released in 2021. So you can assume how much higher is it sitting at right now in 2025, right? So what does that translate to percentages? So in terms of percentages, we're talking about a 23.8. So when you look at the cost of a home, 23.8% of it was due to regulations, right? So the administration is saying that, hey, if we can increase that percentage, housing will be a lot more affordable. And the number is actually higher if you're aiming for a multifamily property, which is sitting at 40.6%. So regulations are accounting for 40.6% of apartment development costs. And this was back in 2022. So that means that the cost nowadays is much higher. Now, the question is, how much can it possibly reduce? Because as we know, the housing market doesn't really have a direct correlation with one thing versus another, because there's too many players in the equation. There's the builder, there's the reaction of the overall market, the investor, and the home buyers, which, 99% of their behavior, it's based on emotion. Do I see myself living in here? Is it worth it? Can I afford it, right? All of those questions come into place, but at the end, the final decision is going to be dictated by what the heart says, right? So, but let's say I want to get an approximation. And so let's just take an example with simple numbers, just to get an idea. So if this reduction actually has a direct correlation, meaning, hey, if I do this, this is what's going to happen. What we'll be seeing is, if we're talking about a reduction, and according to this article, of 23.8%, we're talking that if this comes into place in an effective manner, we will be seeing a reduction of home prices down to 76% of what it's currently costing. So assuming an average cost of 400,000, and I'm just taking a random average, we're seeing a reduction of almost $100,000. We're talking about $304,800 if this initiative turns out to be as effective as it plans to be. I mean, we're yet to see the results, but you never know, right? The next initiative that it's in the works, I guess, it will be expanding housing supply. But I mean, we've all been waiting for that over the last few years. We've been hearing in the news, hey, the reason why housing is so expensive is because we don't have enough inventory in the market. So the more housing becomes available, then the buyers will have more to choose from and less competition in terms of pricing. But I mean, in the end, how are they intending to do that? Because I mean, it's the way I see it is just fairly simple. A builder can come in and build stuff, right? And build houses, but is not as simple. So as I read more into this, it turns out that this has a direct correlation to the initiative mentioned above. So if the reduction of, bureaucracy or regulatory burden happens to be effective, then it is anticipated that the approval process when builders go and apply for permits or whatever projects that they are trying to make happen, the approval process will be streamlined, and hence it will make construction happen faster. So that way more houses hit the market faster, and then eventually, rinse and repeat, and will make the housing supply grow and more houses will be available in the market. So that's in essence what this is saying. Then this initiative came, the way I view it is it's quite interesting. So they're actually looking to promote efficient land use. What do they mean by that? So I dig in a little bit further, and it turns out that the proposal is to use existing federal land to use that land and efforts to provide more housing. So for those who didn't know, the government owns a lot of land in this country. And what's the reason for owning that much land? That's a topic for another episode. But for now, the Housing Administration, or the Trump administration in this case, is also looking into promoting an efficient use of those lands. That way, it will help with more efficient developments. We can see development practices, and this can include encouraging high-density housing in appropriate areas to maximize land use and increase the availability of affordable housing units. Then the next initiative is to encourage private sector participation. So the administration plans to work closely with private developers to encourage investment in affordable housing projects. This collaboration aims to leverage private sector efficiency and innovation to address housing shortages. How are they going to make that happen? I am not quite sure, but I am thinking it probably had to do with making some changes to zoning laws. For example, right now, for those who are brand new to real estate, you can't just go into a residential area and say, hey, I'm just going to build a mall here, right? Like, you have to make sure that the zoning laws comply with, or make the other way around. You have to make sure your project complies with the existing zoning laws. Unless you're trying to build in an area where there's mixed use. So I'm anticipating that some changes might happen on that front. And another way to encourage private sector participation could be creating additional tax incentives to make builders or private investors actually want to really partake, because there's got to be a return for them. Like, what's in it for me, right? It needs to help them generate money. Now, the key question now on this article is, will this order really bring down housing costs? My personal opinion is, I don't know, honestly, because it sounds like it's a great initiative, but one thing is to read something in theory and one thing is to see it in practice, because the market behaves in certain ways that you cannot necessarily control. But according to this article, what they're seeing here is one of the things that could work is that when you're cutting red tape, it could help increase housing supplies and reduce construction costs. Streamlining approvals could accelerate new development projects, and ending specific mandates may lower home energy and appliance costs. So yes, I do see that it could help reduce the cost of home prices by a bit, but I don't think it will just diminish the cost of housing by like a whooping 20 something percent or even 40%. Like I said, we're still in an economic landscape right now, and where the properties, there's not enough housing supply in the market. So yes, housing costs could be slashed thanks to these initiatives, but remember, houses are not built overnight. They take some time. They take months to be able to be complete. And even when they're complete, you still need to wait for a certificate of occupancy and all of this stuff. So if there were to be changes and where home prices are like dramatically slashed, it will take years before that happens, right? Now, back to the article. Potential challenges. Local zoning laws could be an issue. Like I said, like you can't just simply go into a residential area and choose to build something that is commercial. Like there's going to be some changes that are going to take place during that whole transition process before you can even get a permit. And that's only assuming that everybody agrees. It's not just the government, but also the association of neighbors, like everyone who's living in the area. They need to agree to certain projects taking place. Another challenge that could impact this movement is that high interest rates and material costs could limit how much prices fall. And this is something that I've highlighted in other episodes. Tariffs negotiation, even though they aim for the greater good of the country, in the meantime, it's causing havoc. So we're just going to have to hold on tight and see what happens in the meantime. And immigration is also affecting the cost of labor, because let's face it, in this industry, the majority of the labor came from undocumented workers, because it's what allowed builders to be able to make a profit out of it and create jobs, right, for those that are needing jobs. Another potential challenge is that developers might still prioritize higher profit housing over affordable units if the regulation is not balanced with affordability measures. I completely agree. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about the returns. So if the developer is not seeing a major return in certain projects, they are going to target or at least aim to finish one that gives them the higher return faster, so that they can recuperate their money faster. So that could potentially help one type of demographic that could have not easy access, but like an easier access to those type of properties, as opposed to, let's say, for example, low income areas. So that's in it regarding the reform initiatives. I also wanted to share with you the graphs in here, just to give everyone a bit of perspective. I know there's been a lot of noise about the high cost of housing and yada yada, and how it may soon fall, and we'll see a market crash and stuff like that. So I have this table right here that I wanted to share with everybody. And so when you try to make sense of it, first let's take a look at these columns right here. So these gray columns that you see here were they're indicating the U.S. recession. And then we have data that goes all the way back to the late 1980s. And then you can see how housing prices are, doing their thing, right? So they started going up somewhere around the 2000s, and then that's when the big market crash that everyone is talking about happened. Just remember that around this time, a lot of people were not meant to qualify for loans, were qualifying. The industry back in the days didn't have the standard practices that we have now, and where lenders are doing a thorough review of your credit worthiness and making sure that you can't afford a certain type of home or a certain type of real estate. But in the event that there could be a market crash, look at what happened. And I know history doesn't determine what could happen in the future, but it's always good to learn from history, right? To kind of give us some type of perspective and help us prepare. as you can see, when prices started going down, they didn't go down overnight. They just, they went down over the years, slowly but surely. And it wasn't until 2012 that they hit that bottom. But then, thanks to low interest rates, you might say, the market started slowly recuperating. And it wasn't until we hit the pandemic times where there was a mild recession, I guess you can say. And then eventually, after the Fed announced the slashing of interest rates, everybody decided to come in and buy, pushing the prices up. Yes, there had been some deceleration, especially around this time, somewhere between August 2022 and January 2023. Around this time, that's when the Fed announced that they were going to increase their rates. And that decelerated the market a little bit. But if you see, it's still at a historical all-time high. So we are seeing some deceleration, probably caused by the high mortgage rates and probably the fears of all these tariffs negotiation, and no one knows what to expect. But I don't anticipate that the market it's gonna fall, for a lack of a better term, and that we're gonna see the prices of homes bottoming to their core, and that you're going to just come in and be able to buy those houses for cents on the dollar. I don't think that's going to happen. Only time will tell. So I'm just going to stop right here, and now I'm just going to come back to the main screen and see if anyone has any questions about this. If you don't, that's fine. You can always think about them at a later time, and always return to the channel and post your comments down in the section, in the comment section below. So I see a couple of people tuned in, but I don't see anyone mentioning anything. So I think I'm just gonna cut it right here and give your time back. But like I said, any additional questions that might come up, feel free to just pop them down in the comment section below, and I will do my very best to answer you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will be seeing you soon. All right, take care. Bye-bye.